The absolute dominance of Nintendo in the global gaming market is not a result of technological superiority or hardware innovation, but a cold, calculated strategy of blue ocean market manipulation that effectively turned a humble playing card manufacturer into a trillion-yen cultural hegemon. While Sony and Microsoft were busy waging a specs war to see who could render the highest fidelity textures, Nintendo was quietly building a walled garden that trapped generations of consumers through psychological conditioning and the systematic weaponization of nostalgia. To understand how a company that survived the Great Depression, the Second World War, and the rise of the PC master race managed to stay relevant, you have to look past the colorful mascots and the upbeat jingles. You have to look at the ruthless, almost draconian grip they hold over their intellectual property. In the late 19th century, Kyoto was not a hub for digital entertainment. It was a city of tradition, and Nintendo, or Nintendo Koppei as it was then known, was essentially a local operation printing Hanafuda cards. Fusajiro Yamauchi, the founder, wasn't trying to change the world, he was trying to sell paper. But there is something inherently predatory about the card game business. It relies on the hook, the realization that the product is never the game itself, but the thrill of the gamble. This DNA is etched into every piece of software Nintendo has released in the last 40 years. Fast forward to the 1980s. The video game industry in North America had just imploded. Atari had flooded the market with such abysmal garbage, like the infamous ET game, that consumers completely lost faith in home consoles. This was the moment Nintendo chose to strike. But they didn't just walk into the market, they occupied it. They implemented a draconian licensing system known as the Nintendo Seal of Quality. On the surface, it was a promise to the consumer. In reality, it was a monopolistic stranglehold. Third-party developers were barred from publishing games for other systems if they wanted the seal. If you wanted to succeed, you had to play by Nintendo's rules, pay their fees, and submit to their censorship. They essentially controlled the entire flow of information and entertainment in the digital age. They weren't just a gaming company, they were the gatekeepers of play. Now, let's talk about the IKEA effect of gaming. Nintendo doesn't sell you a product, they sell you a ritual. When you buy a Nintendo console, you are buying into an ecosystem where the value is derived from your own emotional labor. Think about it, the grind, the completionism, the collection of Korok seeds, the tedious search for hidden stars. This is not accidental. It is a psychological framework designed to maximize sunk cost. By the time you've spent 40 hours capturing every Pokémon or perfecting every Mario level, you are no longer a customer. You are a brand loyalist. You are an evangelist. You have invested so much of your identity into their world that you become immune to the flaws in their hardware or the lack of innovation in their online infrastructure. But here is the darker secret, their aversion to traditional market trends is their greatest weapon. Whenever the industry pushes for 4K resolution, subscription-based cloud gaming, or hyper-realistic graphics, Nintendo goes the other way. They release underpowered hardware, they restrict their software, and they aggressively litigate against anyone who tries to preserve or emulate their history. Many call this stubbornness, but if you analyze the stock market performance of the company over the last 2 decades, you see a masterclass in market decoupling. By refusing to compete directly with Sony or Microsoft, Nintendo effectively created a separate economy. They are the only ones playing the game, which means they are the only ones setting the price, the rules, and the culture. Consider their nostalgia as a service model. They aren't just selling you a game, they are selling you the feeling you had when you were 8 years old. They know that your adult wallet is controlled by your childhood heart. They constantly re-release the same franchises, Zelda, Mario, Metroid, and people buy them in droves, not because they are groundbreaking, but because they represent a safe emotional retreat. It is a brilliant, albeit cynical, exploitation of the human brain's desire for familiar comfort. They've turned your nostalgia into a recurring revenue stream that is virtually immune to economic downturns. People will skip a meal to buy a Switch game, and Nintendo knows it. Critics point to the lack of modern connectivity as a failure, but from a strategic standpoint, it's a stroke of genius. By keeping their online services primitive, they force social interaction back into the physical realm. Local co-op, physical game cartridges, and limited edition hardware drops create a sense of artificial scarcity. It triggers our evolutionary scarcity bias. When a product is hard to get, or when a feature feels exclusive, we perceive it as having higher value. They are not a technology company, they are a behavioral psychology firm that occasionally makes controllers. Even their legal department is a force of nature. Nintendo is perhaps the most litigious entity in the history of interactive media. They hunt down ROM sites, they take down fan projects, and they protect their IP with a ferocity that borders on the fanatical. Why? Because they know that if they lose control over their imagery, they lose control over the Nintendo magic. If you can play Mario on a browser for free, the value of the console diminishes. If you can change the game, you aren't under their thumb. Every single aspect of the experience is curated to ensure that the user remains a consumer, never a creator. As we look toward the future, with AI and VR on the horizon, Nintendo remains the wild card. They will likely ignore the metaverse, ignore the push for high-definition streaming, and instead release a piece of plastic that sells 100 million units because it plays a game about a plumber in a way that feels just right. It is an insane, calculated, and brilliant strategy. They have successfully convinced the world that a company obsessed with the past is actually the gatekeeper of the future. The sheer arrogance of this strategy is what makes them untouchable. They didn't just build a brand, they built a religion, and we are all just members of the congregation, waiting for the next hit of dopamine disguised as a digital star. So, next time you pick up that controller and feel that familiar rush of excitement, ask yourself, is this fun, or is this just a well-oiled machine playing you like a piano? The history of Nintendo is a testament to the fact that you don't need the best technology to conquer the world, you just need to understand the human psyche better than your competition. They are the puppet masters of our collective childhoods, and we are all too happy to pull the strings ourselves. If you thought this deep dive into the business of nostalgia was mind-bending, you absolutely must watch our video about the secret, multi-billion-dollar phantom economy that keeps the world's biggest brands afloat, which you can find right here on our channel.